Well, good morning. So I was asked to kind of talk about the legislative bills that passed and didn't pass as far as which bills were involved with elections items. So I just want to know, do you want to know the bad news or the good news first?
The good news.
The good news? Let's get the bad news. Okay. Well, the worst bad news isn't necessarily a bill, it's a process that I was hoping to implement this election, or bring back this election cycle. So in 2024, I introduced the FastCast system. In 25, the Lieutenant Governor's office said it was illegal and I couldn't run it. And they wouldn't even discuss it with me until after the elections were over. After the elections were over in 25, the elections director at the LG's office told me, well, it's not illegal. It's that you guys had problems with reconciliation processes, so we didn't want you to run it in 25. So when he said that, I said, yeah, that was underhanded. I'm going to bring it back in 26. But I had to put it through the legal review again. And the lawyers got hung up on a couple words that are in code. And they said it's FastCast, while it is a better system, they liked it, they thought it was better. They said the law didn't allow it. So there's a couple words. So if someone votes in person at a polling location, it says a voter that shows it up at a polling location, I have to check their ID, provide them with the ballot, and allow them to enter the voting booth. But with the FastCast, they bring in the ballot, and I'm not providing them with the ballot. So they're just these technical terms and interpretation of words. And then I have to allow them to enter the voting booth. So I said, well, okay, I've already provided them with the ballot previously, and I'll allow them to go in the voting booth if they want to go there and stand and turn around and come back. And they said, well, you're just kind of bending the words, and it doesn't say that specifically in code that you can do that. And so the lawyer basically said, you can do it, but if anybody contests it, I won't support you in court. And he said they're bringing a ballot that is a by-mail ballot, and so if you return it in that envelope, it has to go through the same processes of signature verification, the 4-digit verification, and the possibility of curing if they bring it back in that ballot, no matter what. So we're probably not going to be doing FastCast again, and that was it was a deflating, very discouraging, all the D words. So we won't be running FastCast again this year, and I'm hoping to work with a certain legislator, Lisa Shepherd, to get those words changed or something that identifies it in code. So with that, HB 479. 479 would have required everybody to return their ballots to a drop box, but that didn't necessarily mean the drop boxes that we have in place. It could be a drop box inside a building, which probably would have been 8 days and on before the election. But that bill passed the House, but in the Senate, Mike McKell and Nate Bluen stopped it in the Senate committee, and it didn't even get to a vote in the Senate committee. So that bill did not pass, and that bill would have been great. That was the bill where you had to show your ID. Everybody had to show their ID in order to vote. Now, we do have a saving grace in that if the SAVE Act passes, then that was basically HB 479. And in essence, 479 would have passed. It's the same thing. So yeah, everybody needs to reach out to John Curtis and say, you are our representative in the Senate. in the federal Senate, and you need to pass the SAVE Act. And he needs to, because he's kind of waffled on it. I don't know where he stands on it. But if the SAVE Act passes, that would basically be what the same thing that 479 would have passed. And we would have to do basically FastCast statewide, and it would be implemented this year. So I'm really hoping that the SAVE Act passes. Another big one that didn't pass was it was kind of a combo, and it was Lisa Shepard's HJR's 25 and HB 529, which would have created the Secretary of State. Again, Mike McKell and Nate Bluen stopped that one in the Senate because it did pass the House. So some of the other ones that didn't pass, HB 227, HB 25. HB 25 would have been a good one. That is kind of the contention with, there's one county clerk that approves all the signatures for the nomination petitions in one county for statewide races. And that would have made that the county where the voter lives would have had to have approved those signatures. But that didn't pass either. HB 604 didn't pass, and that would have been kind of written for Utah County, where somebody cannot serve at a high-level position in the county and also in a municipality. So there's a certain person who's the county administrator and serves on the Vineyard City Council, and that would have outlawed that, but that didn't pass. HB 262, setting judicial retention at 67% instead of 50%, that didn't pass. Making school boards races partisan, HB 256 didn't pass. HB 460 was a horrible bill, and it would basically, if you won through the convention process, you couldn't have the party designation after your name. Only people that went through the signature verification process could. Yeah, that was a horrible bill, but it didn't pass. HB 104, Election Day is a holiday, that didn't pass. And finally, HB 583 would have given the process to cure nomination petition signatures, and that didn't pass. Okay, so those are the bill. Some good, some bad, didn't pass. What did pass? I'm going to start with an easy one, HB 311. So because there was a bill, what bill was it that didn't pass that they made this one pass? I think it was HB 479. Because HB 479 didn't pass, they ran HB 311, and HB 311 will give $100,000 to the Herbert Institute at UVU to do a study on by mail balloting in comparison to in-person voting. And they've already established themselves as very partisan and promoting. They were given $100,000 to do that study.
That passed.
Yeah, that passed.
Oh my.
Yeah, and their reports were raving reviews of ranked choice voting, and they've been very pro by mail. So it's going to be a very partisan report. I'm going to try and weasel my way in there and try and make sure that Chris something, I can't remember his last name right now, is kind of going to be heading it.
Eric?
What?
Is it Chris Eric?
No. Or maybe it's, but I have his contact information, so I'm going to be saying, you better come and talk to me. Otherwise, it's going to be completely biased. And if you don't talk to me, I'm going to raise a stink of the report and post it everywhere saying, you guys missed so many spots, because I could talk for this whole 45 minutes on the problems with by mail balloting.
What was that bill again?
HB 311. I think it was Mike McKell and Jefferson Burton. So a great bill that I've been dealing with the repercussions of this last couple of days is HB 153. So before HB 153, there was the public, private, and withheld categories. And the private and withheld categories kind of kept that data from everybody. And that's kind of one of the big ones. And in 2020 is when the withheld category was created. Before 2020, it was still just public and private. And anybody that was listed as private prior to May 12th, 2020, they were automatically moved to withheld, but didn't necessarily qualify for withheld. To be qualified for withheld, you had to have been a victim of domestic violence or dating violence, or a member of law enforcement, armed forces, or you have a restraining order against somebody. That qualified you. But everybody that was just kind of grandfathered in, they didn't qualify for withheld category. It was just, they just were put in there. So this kind of reversed that. 153 took everybody that was, and also for the last 6 years, being private was so easy. They made it so easy that I would say 95% of the new registrations were designated as private. And it ended up that Utah County had about 65% that were either in private or withheld. So we didn't have access to it. We only had access to like 35% of the voter roll that were in public. So this bill got rid of the private. So there is no longer a private. And the withheld, anybody that was grandfathered in on May 12th, 2020, all of those people were moved to public. And so only the people that actually submitted an application to be withheld remained in withheld. And then the lieutenant governor had to mail a letter out to every person that was in the withheld category with an application to apply for what the new category is called at risk. So everybody had that application. They were supposed to submit that application by the 6th, which was 2 days ago. So as you can imagine, our office received about 300 applications for the at-risk category. And I have stated the policy in my office that I review every application. So yesterday was basically filled with reviewing those applications. And I created 3 different piles. The ones I approved was about 1/3. The ones I denied was about 1/3. And then the lieutenant governor's office messed up on the application. On the application, by statute, they were supposed to have an affidavit that if you said, I am a victim of domestic violence or dating violence, you had to sign an affidavit saying, because you didn't have to give a reason why. You just have to check the box with no explanation. You didn't have to say, in 1920, I was, assaulted by this person. You don't have to give any explanation. But you have to sign an affidavit that says, I swear that I have been a victim of domestic violence. And they did not have that on the form. And they didn't, so 1/3 of the applications checked that box and provided no explanation. Because there's a box that says, please give details. And it's basically details for the other categories. There's like 5 categories. But you don't have to give a reason on that if you check that box of domestic violence. But some of them still provided that explanation. And those ones I went ahead and approved. But those that provided no explanation, I sent an email to the lieutenant governor's office yesterday saying, here's the code. The code says they have to have an affidavit on there. And I even sent an email to the drafting attorney, Thomas Vaughn, saying, this is what the statute says, that it has to be on there. Is that a suggestion or is that required? And he replied back that it says it's required and it's in quote marks, so it has to be exactly that has to be on the application. So the application is deficient. So
Mill Creek, that-
no, but someone very close to him did. So that's what I've been dealing with the last day is all of those applications, and now I have to deal with figuring out what to do with those applications that were deficient. Okay, so moving on, HB 32. That's on the nomination petition. Actually, all petitions, referendums, initiatives, nomination petitions, they all have to have the signature gatherers are required to go through some training, and they have to verify that they've gone through that training before they can go and gather signatures. And if they don't go through that training, their signature packets will be thrown out. And I really petitioned hard for that one because this last petition packet for repeal of Prop 4, I identified 28 packets with fraudulent signatures in them, and I turned them over to the county attorney's office for further investigation. I was accused of throwing out the entire packet. That's not true. We went through my... Yes. Because they hired out-of-state signature gatherers. And those out-of-state signature gatherers, this is my belief. In many states, they don't verify every signature. They do a statistical sampling of signatures. And they apply that statistical sampling to all packets. So in other states, you can risk, getting a couple valid ones in the beginning of the packet, and then possibly turning in fraudulent packets, the rest of the packet, and potentially getting them approved and getting paid for them. Whereas here in Utah, we review every signature. So my staff, I never do the first and second pass. There's a first and second pass on signatures. My staff did the first and second pass and approved and rejected the signatures just as they normally did. And if the rejection rate in that packet was above 80%, I went through those packets individually and looked at every signature and called many of the people in that packet that didn't look like the right signatures, and they verified that they did not sign a packet. So I turned the packet over to the county attorney's office, but we still kept those that were approved as valid. So it was just the ones that they're going after, the ones that were fraudulent and not the ones that were valid. So that statement that was out there in the public is not true.
You know where that statement originated or who's?
I bet you could guess. It's my opponent. HB 209 passed. HB 209 gave us the permission to verify citizenship status of every voter. And it authorized the county clerks and the lieutenant governors to use the Systematic Alien Verification and Entitlements Program to verify citizenship status. So before HB 209, in the registration form, there's a question at the very beginning. It's the first question: Are you a citizen? Are you a citizen of the U.S.? And they mark either yes or no. And then down at the bottom, there's an affidavit saying, I swear that I am a citizen of the U.S. And so if they sign that and check that box, that's it. There is no verification. They don't have to provide citizenship status in any means or way to us in order to register to vote. But now with the passage of HB 209, I can submit our whole voter roll to the SAVE program. And the SAVE program was actually initiated to check citizenship status for employers and government, and the government as employers. So you submit an applicant's name, social security number, or there's 5 different numbers you can submit to verify citizenship status. So for registration, I have to submit their name, their birth date, the last 4 digits of their social security number, and there's a fourth one. There's 4 things. No, it might be their address. Well, whatever it is. But I can't, I have access, it's mainly the social security number. So the social security number, I have access to it, last 4 digits, just the 4 digits. I have access to that number if I look each individual voter up individually on the screen. So if I go through and look up all 368,000 voters, I have access to that. But the Lieutenant Governor's office has the data, and they could send that to me in an Excel file or a CSV file that quick, but they won't do it. They say it's an invasion of privacy. But there's a caveat to that. So with the passage of HB 300, they have to provide me with that data in order for us to do the verification, but they won't give that to me until the next election in June. So between now and June, I could be verifying citizenship status, but they won't give me that data. But they will give it to me just before the primary. And at that point, I will have it and I could run it for the general. So I've been fighting them. I've requested it. They keep denying me. But because they say it's PII, personal identifiable information. And
Then
code.
why do they give it to you later?
It's a conundrum. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. But as far as the SAVE program, there's a registration process. It's about a 2-month registration process in order to get registered to use the SAVE program. And the SAVE program was made available to election entities back in the beginning of the summer of last year. And that's when I started my application process. And I was finally approved. I was approved in late August, but they wouldn't enroll me because they said the Lieutenant Governor's office is in the process of enrolling and I should fall underneath their enrollment. So I waited a month and a half and the Lieutenant Governor's office still wasn't enrolled. And so I requested my registration again and they said, yeah, we're going to go ahead and give it to you because we don't know when the Lieutenant Governor's office is going to finish their application. So I was actually the first entity in Utah, in the elections entity, to be registered to use the SAVE program. So I've been using it. I've actually gone through screen by screen and copied down 460 voters, their social security number, and I have submitted those 460 to the SAVE program. And I have found some anomalies. So far, I have found 4 voters who voted as non-citizens. 2 of them have become citizens since then. And the 2 that voted were quite a ways back. And all 4 of them, there's nothing later than 2020. And so our attorney's office says that they've passed the statute of limitations and the probability of them being able to gain a conviction is very small, so they won't do anything about those 4. But 2 of them have become citizens, and those 2 voted 3 times before they became citizens, both of them. So there were 6 votes cast as non-citizens, and I've got 2 others that have cast but haven't cast ballots since then. And I have found 6 others that are non-citizens but have not cast a ballot. So we have removed them from our voter rolls, but they submitting a registration is a crime, but it's not as bad as a crime as if they had voted. So we have disregarded them, but I still have over 10,000 registrations of people who were born out of the country that I do not have naturalization place or data on. I do believe that most of them And with the 460, a lot of those didn't have naturalization data with us also, but they did verify a citizen. So I believe that the large majority of them are citizens, but there's still the possibility that they're not. And the Lieutenant Governor's office last week actually told us not to use the SAVE program, that they would be doing it for us. Yeah. Not sure if I trust that 100%. So the SAVE Act at the federal level, there's two parts to the SAVE Act. There's the checking of the citizenship status, and there's the voter ID. So with the passage of 209, that's the state portion of the SAVE Act. So that half we already have. But we can only use the SAVE program to verify citizenship status for in-state ballots. So on federal elections, so your Senate, your federal Senate and House and President, if they check that citizen box and signed it, they will still get a federal ballot unless the SAVE Act passes. So the ballots have been bifurcated. So if I find that somebody isn't a citizen, or they haven't submitted any verification that they're a citizen, but they mark citizen, I still have to give them a federal ballot, but I don't have to give them a state, anything that has state elections on it. So we have to create a special ballot just for federal elections. And in Utah County, that'll basically be two different ballots, because our congressional district, we're in both in congressional district 3 and 4 in Utah County. So I have to create two separate ballots for those individuals that haven't verified. So that was HB 209. HB 242, all I wrote was fixes signature packet issues. I'm not sure. Oh, that's part of, there's just a bunch of things that need to be fixed. So on the paid signature gatherers, they have to have a badge identifying them as paid signature gatherers. The signature removals, if collected by paid gatherers, also have to have just a name tag. Prohibits a person from using an initiative or referendum petitions signer's email address for any nonpartisan. So it just kind of fixed a lot of the petition packet gathering issues that have been identified. So nothing big. SB 194, that's another big one. So last year, HB 300 passed. And that was the one, so in Utah County, there was that 4 digits that you were asked to enter with either your last 4, your social security number, your driver license number. If you filled that 4 digits in, that was the main form of verification. And it said if there's 4 digits and there's a signature on the ballot and the 4 digits matched, we had to approve it. We could not reject it based on the signature. So if the signature didn't match at all, but there was a signature, but the 4 digits matched, it was required that we approved that ballot and counted it. And after 2 days of seeing signatures not matching at all, but the 4 digits matched, Utah County started tracking every single one of those. And we identified 780 ballots after those 2 days. So we didn't go back and look at the old ones. Just from that point forward, we identified 780 ballots that were the 4 digits matched, the signature didn't. I looked at several of them, and it was apparent that somebody in the same household signed both ballots. And prior to HB 300, that was a felony. You can't sign that. That was a felony. But with HB 300, it became legal. So basically legalized fraud. And so the 4 digits was not required last year. There were 5 counties that implemented it. And I asked the other 4 counties, did you do any tracking? Actually, I said, did you see this? And they said, yeah, we saw it. Did you track it? No one else tracked it. I was the only county that tracked it. And I gave that to the legislators. And I think because of that, HB 194, they had to fix that. I made it apparent enough that it was legalized fraud. And there was verifiable evidence that it was. And so they had to fix it. So it went back to signatures are the main verification process. And only if the signatures is subjective. Signature verification is very subjective. And if it's like, there's sometimes signatures where, do I approve it? Don't I approve it? There's some similarities, there's some dissimilarities. Then we can look at the 4 digits and say, well, the 4 digits are right. We'll go ahead and verify it. But if the signature is still not clear enough and the 4 digits match, we still can reject that. So it fixed the problems created by the horrible HB 300.
Those who don't have knowledge.
Yes. So that's HB 300. HB 33, there were some political sign adjustments, and that won't go into effect until 2027. So on yard signs, any political advertising has to have a paid for by the candidate or some friends of the candidate or some institution. That's required. And on the 4x8 signs, it was not required. HB 33 now makes it required on anything larger than an 18 by 24 yard sign. So the yard sign doesn't have to have it, but the bigger ones the big 4x8s, those now have to have paid for by on it. So some candidates use these 24 by 24, those will now be required. And I kind of scared some candidates. I knew we'd talked about it, and I noticed that some of them didn't have it on there, and I told them they had to, but I was mistaken as the implementation date. So this year they don't have to have it, but next year they do. And then Lisa Shepherd's HB 361 was a cleanup bill, and it just kind of cleaned up a lot of code, a lot of dates. It didn't really change anything. It just kind of cleaned up a lot of bills. So I believe, no, I don't know if it was on your bill. I think there's a bill now that passed. Yeah, it's a bill this year. On the petition packets for Prop 4, they had to be turned in by February 15th, which fell on a Sunday. Or was it March 15th? Can't remember. I think it's May, or well, whatever. The 15th fell on a Sunday, and so me and 2 of my staff had to come in on Sunday to receive petition packets. So they changed that code to the next business day. So these cleanup bills are actually good, normally good bills. I didn't find anything out of the ordinary out of it, so I'm glad it did get passed and cleaned up a lot of date issues. With that, do you have any questions? So what happens if somebody submits an illegal social security number? Typically, it won't be approved if I set it to save, because I have to submit the name and the social security number. And I know that illegals, they steal a social security number and they use it until they're found because the names don't match. So that it has to match on the name and social security number. And there was one I submitted and it came back from Save saying the data doesn't match. We need more data. And so I went and looked at the social security number and went back to the original registration record. And this was before my tenure, but the clerk that input it reversed the middle 2 numbers. So it was a data entry error. So I submitted it again with the new social security number and it came back as a citizen. So there are clerical errors. Errors happen, and those can be fixed and resubmitted.
So cast vote records are now public record, correct?
Correct.
Okay, which they always
No.
should have been.
Well, that was HB 263 last year, and that passed because of my work with Norm Thurston, because I wanted to be able to post cast vote record, but they negotiated. A lot of the other county clerks don't want to post that. They don't want to be questioned. They don't want to do the extra work it takes to post the cast vote record, and so they negotiated and got it to be where the cast vote record may be published by the county clerk. And so last election, last general was the first time cast vote records could be posted. And of the 29 counties, only 4 counties posted the cast vote records.
So,
Now, does everybody know what the cast vote record is? Probably not. Okay. Cast vote records is before by mail balloting, when voting happened at the precinct level, the precinct handled the ballots. You guys handled the ballots. You touched them, you tallied them, you knew what they were, and you submitted the results to the county clerk. The county clerk compiled it and submitted it to the state. So now with the centralization of by mail balloting, the only people touching the ballots now is my staff. And it's not at your level. So the cast vote record is like an Excel file, or it's a data file of every single ballot and how that ballot was cast, who was voted for on that ballot. So if you got the results at the end of the night and you said, how in the heck did candidate A get 10,000 votes in Utah County? You can open up the cast vote record, and if you know a little bit about Excel, you can sort it, or you can do a count if on it, and you could identify that, yes, in fact, that candidate got 10,000 votes on these specific ballots. You don't know, you can't associate it to a specific voter, because the same as when the precinct counted the ballots, they can't identify who voted that ballot, but you can identify what the ballot would have looked like and who was on that ballot and who got the votes. So that is now posted on, at least on Utah counties, and actually Salt Lake County posted the cast vote record. I commend Laddie Chapman for posting that.
So, after you board, but you request the volunteers to come in. I forget the term.
The audit, the post-election audit.
And that was really a cool experience. Are you still requesting volunteers to do that?
Yes, so that's another interesting point. So when I took office the first year, I sent out a request for citizens to come in and do that audit. So they were the ones doing the audit, so they could see. An audit is basically an audit on a batch. We process ballots in batches of 250 ballots. And after those ballots are completely run through the system, they're stored in what we call pizza boxes. And that's a batch. And we have to audit 1% of our batches. No, 1% of the ballots, which is typically 4 batches. And the lieutenant, we have to submit all the batch numbers to the lieutenant. It's typically 4. So it's 1%. So it would be 1,000. That's the minimum.
4 out of 1,000.
No. It's so 1% of the ballots typically ends up being 4 batches, which is 4 boxes.
4,000 boxes.
What? So it's about 1,000 ballots that we have to, by law, audit. But the lieutenant governor determines which of those batches to audit. Now, since I started, I sent out a request for citizens.
How does she do that?
Well, they say it's random. Now, let me finish though. So I request, from the very beginning, I requested that citizens come in, and they're the ones doing the audit. Last year, the lieutenant governor revised the election code handbook and says now 50% of the people that come in to do the audit has to be outside of the county clerk's office. So they're just kind of catching up to what we've been doing since 23. Because ours is basically at least 2/3 of our workers are citizens. Now, we pull those 4 batches. We do those according to what the lieutenant governor said. After that, I say, okay, you as citizens, here's all the pizza boxes with all the batches. You go pick 4 boxes. I'm not going to tell you which box to pick. You go pick them. And then we audit those. So our audit takes a little longer because I don't know how the lieutenant governor picks those 4 or those batches. So I let the citizens pick those 4 batches. And then we audit those. And I think that instills more confidence in the citizens that the audit actually works. And what that is we know by batch what ballots were cast and the results in that box. And so that count of the paper ballot has to match what is the count on our system. And it's a statistical, you're only, auditing 2%, and we have to apply that to the whole and assume that it's going to be the same for all of them. It's just testing the accuracy of the tabulation equipment. And in the years that I've been doing it, we've only found one error, and that was because somebody used a pencil. And that pencil mark was not dark enough, and the tabulating equipment did not pick it up. And that's why we ask you to use pen or blue or black pen. So the pencil mark didn't pick it up, but since the audit is done before Canvas, we were able to add that extra vote in for that candidate for that pencil mark. Now you could say, well, you had 1 in pencil out of 2%. Now you have to go and look at all 98% more, but it was statistically, it was just that 1, and the number of people that use pencils is very small. So please don't use pencil. And then the reason they don't want you to use felt tip markers is not because the tabulating equipment doesn't pick it up. It's because it bleeds through, and if there's a 2-sided ballot, it puts a mark on the other side of the ballot. And that ballot, it probably won't affect it because the ovals are on the left, and so on the other side, it won't line up with an oval. But it does bleed through, and there's that chance that it could affect the vote on the other side of the ballot. So blue or black pen? You had another question.
Well, it was a continuation
Okay.
With the cast vote records. Now, the county clerk may post those or may not, but either way, they should be grandma requestable
Yes,
at this point.
if they produced them.
Well,
So if they didn't produce them, then they're not election material, and after Canvas, they're locked up.
okay, so that seems a little strange.
Problematic? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and a side question, there was contention over the 2020 cast vote record for a long time. Are those still around?
No, those are all been destroyed.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was a lawsuit that was holding it up, and after the lawsuit was finalized and then there was a time period where it could have been appealed. There was no appeal filed for the final judge's ruling, and so after that, they were destroyed.
By law, are
By
you
law.
required to destroy them?
22 months. So we had them for probably 3.5 years before they were destroyed.
That brings up another question. But the video for the boxes and so forth, in law it says that the video needs to be destroyed at the end of the calendar year. I don't think that was.
Or 22 months. There's an or statement in there.
And
And
it doesn't say or, unless it's contested of some sort.
Right.
There's no or though.
Go back and read it.
I'll check that.
Okay.
But, I'm pretty sure there's no or. I looked at it pretty good. So, wouldn't someone be able to make a pretty decent argument that becomes part of the election
record?
Well, it's part of the election record unless there's a more specific statute. So everything's election material unless there's a more specific statute, and there's a more specific statute in regards to the video. So that
Okay.
that statute rules the more general statute.
But then, as far as state law, but what about federal law, which says all election materials? Which,
There still is more specific statute, and I think federal law says that the state law in this respect, it's complex. You could make if you want to take it to court, you can make that statement, and if you want to file it and fight it and pay for it, that's the way they stop you. Is it's costly to contest anything.
Bill Lee, mission, he was supposed to, that he wasn't allowed. How do you certify that it was indeed a valid election when even the people that are supposed to certify it can't even see it?
It's a big conundrum.
That's my question.
And that's one of the reasons why I fought for, I worked really hard. So I was the only one that supported the passage of 263, which made the cast vote records allowable. And when the House and the Senate passed 263, there were two county clerks that wrote a letter to the governor asking him to veto 263 and asked all the county clerks to sign it. 28 of the 29 county clerks signed that letter. I bet you can guess who didn't sign that letter. Yeah. And I think because of that, the governor did sign it, but he signed it with the agreement that there would be some modifications, and there were some modifications to 263 in interim special session. I think it was HB 1003 in special session 25 that made some modifications to it, but I pushed to keep, they wanted to get rid of the cast vote record in that, but I said no way, and Norm Thurston, bless his heart, he also argued that had to stay in there, and so that stayed in the bill.
So who actually can view the cast vote
It's online. You can go and view the cast vote record for Utah County.
now it is.
Right now, if you go to utahcounty.gov and click county elections,
If the county clerk chooses not to show it, and you live in the county that you won't be able to see.
good
that.
luck. Yeah, because it's after canvas,
Like a uniform lot seems like.
but it says may post the cast vote record. It doesn't say shall. So that could be something that we continue working with the legislators to change that from a may to a shall. Lisa Shepherd.
Crazy.
Yeah, there's some crazy things. I think probably last question.
So I was trying to get on the state website to look at contributions that people are getting. It just says it's forbidden, it's forbidden. And I tried to call Deidre Henderson's office.
So for the candidates,
For the candidates.
so the candidates don't have to turn in their state financial statements until 7 days before the primary. So there is no financial disclosure. Now, for state level, that's different. For county level, that's the county, is we don't have to turn them in until 7 days before primary. What's this? Yes.
And it's not just, it says it's forbidden. It's talking to the public service.
Well,
So you can't-
I don't know if it's forbidden. You can't forbid it, but it's not required. So there's no candidate is going to submit financial statements until they have to. So there is no financial statement for them to post.
And I would say if it says no data available, that's cool, but it says forbidden.
Well,
You don't have access to this.
yeah, well, that's as much as the affidavit saying that you are a victim of, domestic violence. It's not there. It's missing. So, okay, we'll sneak in one more question.
Yeah.
This isn't a question.
Oh.
It's a thank you.
Oh,
Having been to the, thank you for doing a good job. For engaging with and for not just doing what your opponent in the upcoming election advocates, just shutting up and doing your job. you're doing going above that.
Yeah, his biggest argument is Aaron made mistakes, vote for me. And they're all lies. And it's very disheartening to have to counter all these lies, but it also gives me the opportunity to say there is a big distinction between me and him. Because a lot of times when two good conservatives run against each other, it's like, who do I vote for? It's hard to tell. But in this race, there is a big distinction. And the biggest one is he's saying the county clerk should stay in his office and do his job, dot his I's and cross his T's. I advocate no. It is my responsibility to take a look at the election process, find where it needs to be improved, and by any means, work with the legislature to change it so it's more safe and secure. And I have done that, and I've proven that I've done that. And that's a big distinction. So you can either vote for the person who you think should just shut up and do his job, or someone that's going to advocate for you and the security of our elections.
Let's give him a hand.
Thank you very much.